is it true that neurotypical people do not like us autistic people, or is it just our impression? Is it just something we made up, or is it, just because we're different and we don't get along? Well, there was a study back in 2017 by Dr. Noah Sasson, hope I'm saying that right, and the study was called Neurotypical Peers Are Less Willing to Interact with Those with Autism Based on a Thin Slice Judgment. That's pretty close to the title. It's close. And this is exactly what they found, is that not only did, in the study, neurotypical people just not like the autistic people, they didn't know that they were autistic. That's the key. They didn't know they're autistic. So if you're thinking, oh, they know I'm autistic and they don't like me because of that, what this study showed is that it's not necessarily that. They don't look at you and go, oh, you're talking like an autistic person, I don't like that. Pretty much what it is that they see that we're different in ways they don't understand, and then they start to make assumptions, or they just start to act weird towards us. And here's another thing as well about this. If you've noticed throughout your life that you have these interactions with people and they don't like you, or you might find that they kind of pick on you, and it's that whole thing, the glove slap thing in The Simpsons. I think it's a great analogy where, if you haven't seen it, where Homer discovers the idea of a glove slap. He holds these gloves in his hand and he walks around slapping people as he goes past. What are they going to do about it? And eventually he does it to the wrong guy, and the guy challenges him to a duel and says, I accept your challenge to the duel. And next thing, he's in a gun, he's about to, 10 paces at noon and have a gunfight with this guy, which is not what he wanted. And the point of the story really is to illustrate that when people are dishing things out like that, that they don't expect to get anything in return. And so that's one thing. The neurotypical people, sometimes they see we're different and they go, I'm going to dish out some punishment, or I'm going to say some rude things, because they kind of have figured out that they're not going to get anything in return. They're not going to get any lip back from us. There's other things that go on here as well. I remember 20 years ago, I did this self-defense course, and they showed us this video where they interviewed all of these criminals that had been in jail, reformed criminals, and now they're out. And now they were explaining to us public how it was that they chose their victims. How did they choose who to pick out of a crowd, who they were going to rob? And lack of confidence was one of the things. And they did that just entirely by body language, just someone who walks with their head down, for example. And why am I bringing this up? The reason this is relevant is that neurotypical people do a similar thing, where they see certain things that we do, they decide we don't like us, but also, hey, this is someone they think that they can pick on. I'll give you a little story in a second about this, how this, I didn't understand why throughout my life. And, I did, about 5 years of karate, Shokukai karate. And then I moved on, and years later I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And this was all driven from being bullied throughout my life. And the karate gave me some confidence that I at least would be able to fight back if somebody was to start punching me or something. And it very much, I won't go into it, but the karate is very useful. It's very good. However, when I went and did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I gained a much greater confidence. I did that. I can't remember how many years, because I've been ill and so forth, but I've got the purple belt. That's where I'm at the moment. I'm not finished. But for illness, because of illnesses, I haven't been able to train lately. But the point of the story is that I did all that because I was insecure, and I needed to know that I could defend myself if somebody decided to get, violent with me or what have you. But now I look back, I don't regret doing that. And I feel still, I have a much greater confidence if, things come to blows. However, I'm looking back now, knowing what I know now, I'm realising what goes wrong, and people see a little bit of boundaryless. I saw a bit of boundarylessness in me, porous boundaries, seeing that I was tolerating disrespect, because I've always sort of fired back at people, but I think I sort of held back a little bit too much before I did. I think, let me know you're I think my line was like this, is that if someone said something smart, I didn't want to, be too easy to get going. I didn't want to be this person that fired up too easily, because people find that amusing. So I didn't want to do that. But I found that part of it was that I would allow a little bit too much disrespect. And I'll tell you, here's the story that happened to me many years ago. It was this lady that I knew, that we were both in a program together, Lifeline volunteers we were. And I saw her out and about, and she invited me over. I'd just finished up with a going away party, and I'd finished up, and she invited, hey, come over, sit down. And it turned out she was on a date with this guy, but he wanted me to come over as well. I'd never met him. And we're sitting down and we have a few drinks. And I know it's probably odd on a date, but she insisted, and he was fine with it. He was like, oh, yeah, great. And I know I don't like being that third wheel, but they both insisted. I made sure they both were happy for me to sit there with them. And again, I didn't ask, can I sit here? They brought me over. And so anyway, I'm sitting there talking to them. And I don't know why, this guy, he'd had a few drinks. And I don't know where or what. I still, in retrospect, don't understand why this happened, but I'll just tell you what happened anyway. We were sitting there, and out of nowhere, this guy just announces to me that he would love to punch me in the face. I'm not exaggerating. He literally said, I'd love to punch you in the face. That'd be something good to do, I guess, is what he was trying to get across to me. And I guess over the years of people trying bullying and everything, sometimes they want a reaction. I think what people like this guy wanted, what he really wanted, was to see fear in my eyes, to see me like, oh God, I've just been threatened. Oh, what am I going to do? I think he wanted that. And I'm pretty sure he had misjudged this scenario, because what happened was I stood up calmly. I stood up and I smiled the way I'm smiling now and said, okay then, well, let's go outside. I said it in that way, literally, so I wasn't intimidated. And I guess I saw it for what it was. I was pretty sure he didn't want to go outside. But at the same time, there was a part of me thinking, if you're going to say that, you better want to do something about it. And I was prepared to go outside. I thought, well, if you're going to, you better back up what you've said. And as I said, I stood up and I said, okay, well, let's go outside then, with a smile on my face, in a calm voice. So passerby and the woman that I knew didn't feel like I'm not offending from the victim position. I'm not all of a sudden becoming the bad guy, because that's what can happen in these situations. But it's like, oh yeah, no worries, let's go outside. He didn't want to. And he was like, oh, no. And then I was like, oh, no, it's okay. Let's, you said you wanted to, And he was like, oh, and then he was apologising. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. And I'm like, you sure? No, he didn't want to go. And then, he died in the arse, is what we say in Australia. He died in the arse. He didn't want to have a bar of it. And, for some reason, again, I see this as boundaryless on my part, that I continued to hang around with her and him for the rest of the night. And, of course, I wasn't scared of the guy, but he was really, ashamed of what he'd done, and he just wouldn't stop apologising the rest of the night. And I'm like, oh, it's fine. Yeah, now I would just be like, yeah, I don't want to hang around with this kind of guy. But I don't know if that story highlights exactly. He saw I was different. He could see the autism. I didn't know I was autistic then. He saw the boundarylessness of me in various ways. And part of that boundarylessness, or porous boundaries, is allowing a little bit too much disrespect from people, or just masking too much, being too much of a people pleaser. All of these things, they see that. And like going back to what I was saying about the criminals, they want an easy target. That's what I was trying to say about the criminals, that they said in that video, in the self-defense video that I was referring to before. That's what they're after. They would literally, the criminals, they would go up to people and ask for the time. I never understood why they did this, by the way. But what they're looking for is your reaction. So if they walk up to someone, I'll give you two scenarios, right? So if someone walks up to me now and says, can you tell me the time? And my reaction is, yeah, sure, it's 1 o'clock. They won't do anything else because I'm too confident. I'm not scared of them from that reaction. But this is what they're looking for. This is this reaction where they I know this is a podcast and you may not be able to see this, but I'll try to explain if you're not watching it. The second scenario is they walk up to you and you worriedly look at your watch and they ask, do you know the time? Can you tell me the time? And now you look relieved. You're like, oh, thank God, they just want to ask me the time. Okay, oh, cool, it's 1 o'clock. Now they ask for your wallet. Now they can see you're a bit of an easy target. And I believe this thing with the neurotypicals who will pick on us, that's what they're after as well. And so there are things we can do about this. My first podcast I did on this channel was about boundaries. And I know it's kind of a bit of a controversial subject in a way because people just see it as restrictions and stuff. And I did listen to a very, very extensive podcast called Beyond Bitchy about this. But I promise you, if you do learn about boundaries a little bit, just to know, especially to know where you're going wrong, you'll probably find that you're less likely to get in these situations with other people. So to recap, what we talked about is that neurotypical people don't like us by default because we are different and they don't know that we're autistic. Also, that we can become easy targets of bullying because people feel like they can just say whatever they like to us. And we can learn, like I said, about boundaries, learning what you will and won't tolerate with people. And, of course, because I did it, I think it's a good idea. Learning some self-defense, boxing, kickboxing, karate, whatever floats your boat, whatever really that you like. They're all going to try to tell you that one's superior to the other. Judo, fantastic. If you're a bit older, maybe not so because you're getting smacked into the mat. Underrated. I think judo is very underrated. It's the choice of self-defense and for the Japanese police. That's what they use. And it's amazing. So pick whatever you like. If you know some way of defending yourself as opposed to absolutely nothing, you're much less likely to be taken advantage of. And as I said, the awareness part of it, be aware that sometimes people will look for the lack of confidence and you can fake that. Not looking at your shoes when you're walking down the street. Just practice keeping your eyes up and, don't stare at people, but if somebody comes up and talks to you, just look at them dead eye. Don't have any emotion. If you're trying to de-escalate, have your eyebrows up. Something I learned in jiu-jitsu. So that's it. I think they've covered everything there. And as I said, learn some self-defense possibly as well. I know for me that made me a lot more confident when it came to dealing with when things would get out of hand. And I should also throw in all of this, if you've had childhood trauma, it's probably a good idea to learn some kind of self-defense, because I know in my case, the trauma is what would make me kind of freak out in these situations as someone's yelling and comes up to you and everything. And fortunately for me, I had a really good instructor, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor who understood this. He understood stress induction is what he called it. And I'll tell you a little story about that and then I'll leave you go. The story was, many years ago when I pretty much started, I was still a white belt. In Jiu-Jitsu, you're a white belt for pretty much a minimum of 2 years, even if you train regularly, before you get your blue belt. I was a white belt and we did striking, we did boxing. And I was doing private lessons with my instructor at the time, and he landed a punch right on my nose, and I burst into tears. And he was like, whoa, what's going on? He'd never seen that from me. And then I told him that I'd had an abusive childhood, and especially that my stepfather used to, do boxing with me, but then one day I must have hit him harder than I meant to. I was only like 6 or 7. And so then he just decided to smack me in the nose with no gloves on. And I just remember the sting of it, and I remember it shocked me and hurt. And, and when my instructor did the same, it it did cause the same reaction. And the reason I'm laughing is because I remember his reaction was like, oh, yeah, no worries, we can work on this. Don't worry, I've got you. Which I thought he meant he was going to coddle me. But no, what he meant was like, we're going to punch you the crap out of you constantly. And, I'm going to eventually get this out of your system. And I remember this the next day, or we were at a class where we were doing boxing. And it was like you have your hands up and the other person's punching into the arms. And there was this teenage boy that was hitting me really softly because I think he realised it's his go next. So, of course, he was taking it easy, which was clever of him. And I was fine with it. But then my instructor came up and put his hand on me and hand on the guy and said, you're not doing him any favours, pointing at me. He's like, hit him harder. But then he turns to me and says, you're in a safe place. This is where you want this to happen. This is where you want the hits to come. And I was just like, oh, okay. And it was very unpleasant because some of the punches we get through and everything. But over time, eventually, the way he trained us was if you did get injured, like sometimes you get poked in the eye or something and you'd go off the mat. And he'd see that. He would go, get back on the mat. He had this thing. We all just thought he was a bastard. But eventually what happened is that any of us did get injured or someone hit us or whatever, we would just keep going because he trained us that stopping and running off the mat was not acceptable. Until one day I did cop a strike. I got kneed right in the face by this guy trying to pass my guard and it hurt like hell. And he wanted to stop because he felt bad and he rightly nearly knocked me out, nearly broke my cheekbone. But I kept going because that's how I was trained. Anyway, long story. That was the thing about if you get a good instructor in self-defense, and that's the good place to be if you want to go somewhere to learn, again, piggybacking on what I said before about childhood trauma. If you've had childhood trauma and people try to bully you, that's what they're seeing. You're an easy target. And it's from ways you may not realise you're giving off. And you can learn these things. You can learn to not give these signs off. You can learn techniques for how to handle people. And also, believe me, when you've trained in a gym with people in this stuff, you do find that the stress of those interactions go down. Someone coming up to you yelling, you're not going to freak out anymore because you've done the stress induction. Anyway, hope this really helps. We started talking about neurotypical people don't like autistic people. And we're talking a little bit about bullying. Why do we get singled out is the word really. So I've given you some things that'll work for me and I've noticed have worked for other people as well. And so, yeah, if you've done some self-defense and you found that helpful, I'd like to hear about that. And also, yeah, if you're finding this confusing and you're in this place where you're like, oh, holy hell, I'm getting picked on a lot, what the hell? If you need some more resources or some I can point you in the right direction. Not an expert in any of this stuff, by the way. I'm just an autistic guy who's 50 and been through a lot of this stuff previously, and I might be able to put you in the right direction. So have yourself a good day.